Hey, it's Miguel Dorati back here on the CRP, and I am joined by Anthony Scott Pyatt, our boxing guy, and we're going to look at the O2 Arena Saturday offering. July 13th sees Frank Warren and his Queensberry Promotions locking down the O2, and they're offering a big card with a pair of heavyweight fights that are going to get a lot of attention at the top of the card, basically. We're going to go over 4 of the fights with ASP here and see what we got coming to us from London. Obviously, the main events and the fights of interest come in the heavyweight division. And what we got is we got Bryant Jennings, the American veteran, now 24-3. He is going to face Joe Joyce. Joe Joyce is 9-0. They call him the Juggernaut. Joyce, he's the Olympian after Anthony Joshua for the United Kingdom. So he was a 2016 Olympian, and he's moving fast through the heavyweight ranks. However, he did turn pro in his 30s or around 30, so he's got to move fast. Brian Jennings, just about, he's faced Bermain Stivern and a couple other known quantities. So Brian Jennings here to show if he's got anything left in the tank, basically. How do you see? Does Jennings have a chance against the Juggernaut?
Oh, I mean, a chance, maybe. I mean, because look, in 2015, he lost back-to-back fights against Vladimir Klitschko and Louis Ortiz. Unanimous decision against Klitschko, so that's sort of a kudos to him. Knocked out in the 7th by Louis Ortiz. Then he won 5 in a row, and then he did lose to Oscar Rivas. Nothing to, 12th round TKO. No shame in that. That was just this year, January 8th. As you mentioned, Joyce is a super heavyweight silver medal winner for 2016. He is 33 with only 9 fights, all 9 of them knockouts, including Bermain Stivern in round 6. But although Klitschko failed to knock out Jennings, it was the last fight where Vladimir that he ever won before losing to Tyson Fury and then Anthony Joshua and retiring. So how good was Klitschko then, really? I mean, it's not a very good measure to me on Jennings because Klitschko then went on to lose 2 fights and retire. And I think I like the fight against Anthony Joshua, but then with AJ losing to Ruiz and seeming vulnerable, it's then kind of tough to gauge, how good is Bryant really? Does he have a chin or not? I'm not sure. So it's not good enough for me on the odds to take the overbet. Joyce will probably finish him, or we'll see him be tested, late endurance. But either way, I expect Joyce to win. It would be interesting to see this one go a little later than a lot of Joyce's fights have done. Maybe I'm wishful thinking it could happen a little sooner, but I think Joyce KO in round 7.
Okay, and so we've got Jennings going to fail to break through. Going to London, it is a tall order to go there at any time and take on any one of these guys. And now he's walking in, despite his record, despite his resume, he is the underdog. And, they call him a juggernaut, not only in the ring, but sometimes that's what you face when you're on the road as well. The next fight in the heavyweight division, very interesting fight here and very unusual fight, a fight that you don't often see. So kudos to both fighters. Kudos to promoter Frank Warren for putting it on as we get undefeated fighters on the way up in the heavyweight division. Daniel Dubois, sort of the golden boy. He's 21, 22 years old and in a situation there where he was slated to be London, the UK Olympian in 2020, but opted to turn pro. So Dubois comes with the amateur background and the pedigree, and he's 11-0 as a pro, so he's actually moved faster than Joyce since his decision to turn. And, like I said, he's still very, very young. Now, his opponent, Nathan Gorman, is not someone to sleep on. Also a fighter with a vast amateur background, 16-0 as a pro, so he's putting in the work. And in an interesting twist, especially now that, on the modern stage, Tyson Fury is basically taken over on the world stage. He is a cousin of Tyson Fury and has trained and works with them in his preparation has a similar preparatory mindset where they're analyzing the fights and things. And again, with respect to Frank Warren, they've done a great job promoting the fight in that they've been talking about it for a little while around and saying that they would do it. Now they've done it. It was backed up with TV shows and things. There were clips of Daniel Dubois' last fight where Gorman was actually sitting round two with a microphone, and that's all available out there. So they've done a good job of hyping it. And at the end of the day, 16-0 and 11-0, one guy's going to lose his O, and that's very meaningful. So they're going to put their all into this fight as if it was a heavyweight title fight. The bottom line is the British heavyweight title is on the line, and this may be my choice for most compelling fight of the weekend.
This should be a great fight. It really should. And they are going to fight like their careers depend on it, because it's going to change the course of one of these guys' careers. As you mentioned, Joe Joyce being the 2016 Olympic super heavyweight silver medalist, Anthony Joshua, then Daniel Dubois was really set up to be that guy. But that's an important factor when you look at this, because at 21, every opponent he's fought has had a winning record. Now, he's 11-0 with 10 knockouts. So it's not quite the same as Joe Joyce with 9-0, 9 knockouts. There's one that wasn't a knockout, but that actually told me something about this guy that's pretty important. His one decision was a dominant 191 in a 10-round fight. So he can box and he can punch. And I think he can knock out in 6 more than likely, Dubois on this one. Miguel, I wanted to ask you as a judge, how do you get a 100-91 in a 10-round fight?
Just 1 second.
Nathan Gorman, by the way, only 7 opponents had a winning record for Nathan Gorman. So he KO'd Tom Mrazek in round 3. But Mrazek is 10-70-6, and he's been knocked out 24 times. But Miguel, what I wanted to ask you is Daniel Dubois' one win that was not a knockout. It was a decision where he was dominant 100-91. Now in a 10-round fight, if he's 100, shouldn't the other guy be 90? How do I get 100-91 in a 10-round fight? It's curious.
The bottom line is maybe they're using one judge. They often do that in England. And what that one judge did is he probably judged one round a tie.
They gave him both a point.
Yeah. So so literally one round is 10-10.
Well, there you go. I appreciate that knowledge, of course, you always bring to it. But Dubois KO in 6 is my call on this one.
Okay. And that's a fair call. A lot of people are taking a look at it, but I will caution that Gorman is very similar in mindset to Tyson Fury in one way. He doesn't have a big personality, and he's young and things like that. But what I'm talking about is the cerebral approach to boxing, and to breaking it down and stuff like that. And he's going to try to bring that, and he wants to, he knows what he wants to do with Dubois, and it does include, taking it to him and bringing him, body shots and hitting him with a lot of punches and things. At least that's the rhetoric. So we'll see if he's able to execute that. But I like the confidence, and that's the other part that he mimics Fury and many of the members of the Fury camp. We also have Hughie Fury fighting this weekend as well in Jeddah. So is that confidence, So I wouldn't sleep on Gorman on that one. There are a couple fights on the undercard that we want to look at here.
Hey, let me ask you real quick, though. At plus 160, is this something we should maybe suggest to our listeners that like to wage to take a look at Gorman on that plus 160? Is that quite enough? Because I do hear what you're saying, and I mean, he 7 opponents with that with a winning record out of 16. That's what scares me about Gorman. But I hear what you're saying. Is 160 enough to do an on-the-fly sort of dog watch here? I mean, it's kind of a dog watch, isn't it?
Yeah, Gorman warrants that. To me, the situation is this. Obviously, we're non-American, we're Americans rather, we're non-British fans here. So the British fans are going to have a much more intimate feel for this fight. And I think that's one of the things that's going to make it a hot fight is that they're going to be two separate camps. So you're not going to convince anyone from Dubois' camp that Gorman's going to win and vice versa. But Gorman has a firm camp behind him. I wouldn't even be surprised if that line is closer than the bookmakers might want it because money's coming on Gorman. The other part of it is we're talking about young fighters. Dubois is 11-0. Gorman's 16-0. The extra ring time at this point may benefit Gorman, even if it is against lesser opposition. That's what that's for in boxing in the early, going, so to speak. And, notably, they've also shared some common opponents, right? And they both gotten the jobs done in respective fashions. I think Dubois has been a little bit more impressive the whole way through. But I think Gorman warrants a look here because the other part of it is Gorman's been thinking about this fight for a long time. Dubois, as young as he is, that he may already be intoxicated with like the next Anthony Joshua kind of label. That doesn't even look as good anymore, right? But he had that label, and we'll see. We'll see. I do think, like I said, we're not going to change any minds, but I think this is a good illustration of how this is going to be a fight with firmly divided camps.
Well, I'm going to say that I tried to do my research before these shows and look up their records and watch some film and do some other things. And I try and listen to the experts. And I've just listened to another expert, and we're going to have an on-air dog watch, Gorman at plus 160, thanks to Miguel Iterati.
I mean, the thing is if Gorman doesn't win, Dubois was favored to win. And so that's the deal with that dog watch. I'm adding a little asterisk to it, but I do feel that Gorman deserves some respect. And the bottom line is that, to win a little bit of money on the plus side is always beneficial. So right. Gorman, even off a loss at 16-1, Gorman is somebody to keep an eye on. The bottom line is this is a good illustration of how the British scene and the British heavyweight scene seems to be more advanced than the American scene. And we're going to see a couple of these guys on ESPN Plus, the app. So you want to check your Saturday start times for that and check out these fights. Gorman and Dubois are going to light it up. And then you also have Joyce, who's the other guy, the other elephant in the room coming up on the British scene. So a good chance to see three British up-and-comers. Let me get to the rest of the card real fast here because we got a middleweight fight. Liam the Machine Williams taking on Karim Achour. Liam, obviously the big name and the favorite here at minus 1,200. Achour plus 600. How do you see this one?
It's a fairly interesting one. Karim, and I've got a strange pick on this one, everybody. So listen up here. Karim Achour's last loss was to David Lemieux, a unanimous decision. But Lemieux had missed weight, and so he couldn't win the belt. But Achour's never been knocked out. He only has 4 KOs against other opponents. So he's not a guy that gets knocked out. He's not a guy that knocks out. Let's move on and take a quick look at Liam. 27-5-3 for Achour, by the way. 3 draws. That comes into play. Liam, the Machine Williams, both his losses were to another Liam Smith. First, Williams was deemed in no position to continue after he got a cut on his right eyelid. So they had a rematch, and then he lost that one by majority decision. So he didn't get beat horribly in any of them. Next 2 fighters that he fought, though, were 5-32 and 4-2. So now he's had a draw against a guy who was 11-10 with 3 draws. So that's where I'm getting at. My official prediction is Williams by decision, but the last time he fought a guy with 3 draws, and again, 15 knockouts for 23 fights, not incredible for Williams. Achour, only 4 knockouts for 35 fights, so he's not going to knock him out. But maybe we can get into a draw. So if you can find a draw at a plus 800 or better, plus 1,000. Usually draws will give you incredible odds. So they're kind of fun to call and they're kind of fun to win. So if you can find that at plus 800 or plus 1,200 if you're lucky. Throw some money on the draw in this fight.
Okay, and that makes sense. You get a couple of experienced competitors. They fall into a rut in the fight, and you get, similar rounds that are hard to judge, and it could go any which way there. So, with the odds, yeah, it makes sense, especially if it's, a little bit, Williams a big favorite to win overall. So we'll see there. And then the other fight that I want to look at was super flyweight action. Not a lot of super flyweight action coming to us out of England, but they have Sonny Edwards there. Edwards 11-0, and he struggles for competition on the islands and stuff, but he's also very popular and hoping, to get out onto the world level. Hiram Gallardo here, his opponent 12-2-2. Basically a feature fight for Edwards at minus 1,500. Gallardo paying back plus 700. Does Gallardo have a chance?
Oh, yes, maybe. Maybe. At a plus 700, I kind of like it. And because what's your point now? These guys are super flyweights. And at that weight, they're not going to knock a lot of people out. Sonny's 11-0 with 4 knockouts. Gallardo only has 4 knockouts, 12-2-2. So each of them, between them, at nearly 30 fights, only have 8 knockouts, 4 each. So his losses, Geraldo's, let's put this in perspective. His losses came back-to-back in late 2016 and early 2017. He's had 7 fights since then and done pretty well. But this is his first fight out of Mexico. So there's some unknowns to Gallardo that can play in to something maybe kind of funny happening sometimes, surprising. Sonny Edwards, he's, as you say, not a lot of competition, so he's fought some real poor records. Neither fight has that knockout power. Many of Edwards' fights were only 4 rounds, so maybe he'll knock you out if he had 8 rounds. But in the 4-rounders, he's not knocking people out. I'm going to call Edwards by decision, but I'm going to put a dog watch on Gallardo plus 700. I like that plus 700. And we'll point out, as Miguel called earlier, our on-air dog watch. These are dog watch, not dog picks. Watch it. It could be interesting. You might get your money on it. These aren't dog picks. When a dog pick is when we're pretty darn sure this guy's going to win and definitely do it. So these are fun to look at plus 700. It might be worth $100 to get 800 back in your pocket instead. So that's what I'm going to say. The dog watch and Edwards by decision officially.
That's a look at what I consider the big card here. That's a look at what I consider the big card here this weekend. London's O2 Arena bringing us heavyweight extravaganza, courtesy of Frank Warren and his Queensberry Promotions. The fights are available on ESPN Plus. Check your local listings for start times. I'm Miguel Dorati, and that's ASP. He's been making his picks for Saturday's fight action.
Good show, Miguel.